Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I want to show you a very exciting game. This game was so exciting for me when I was just following the game online that I was just, on my chair and looking at the board like the whole time that this game, or it's better to say this match, was played by no other than a former world champion, Magnus Carlsen, the strongest chess player of our time, and Nepomniachtchi, who actually played in World Championship match 2 times. This game was played in AI Cup, which was online, and players in this tournament, they compete 4 times. Basically, they're playing a match, consists of 4 games, and this was one of the games that was so exciting. And you will see that someone misses a checkmate, and I don't want to explain more than that. I want you guys to see this game yourself, and then you can judge this game at the end. Okay, let's dive into it. So Magnus Carlsen is playing as black here, and Nepomniachtchi, as you can see, is playing as white. So Jan started with e4, c5, Sicilian defense, knight f3, d6, and white here played bishop b5. As you may know, this move d4 is more popular, and I would say it's the main line, but bishop b5 is also completely playable. But notice that in such tournaments, the players usually don't want to play their own, like their main repertoire. So that's why sometimes they deviate from their, main repertoire. And one more thing that I need to mention here is that this is a 15-minute game. So this is a rapid game, a 15-minute plus 10 seconds increment for each move. And when you play a blitz game or rapid game, players can make more mistakes, so it can be more exciting for the audience, I would say. But anyway, so here white played bishop b5, black played knight d7. In this position, black can play knight c6, knight d7, and bishop d7. All of these moves are playable. So black played knight d7, castle, a6, bishop e2, knight f6, d3, e6, a4. a4 prevents this move b5. That's why black played b6 instead, and black wants to fianchetto the bishop. Knight f to d2. The reason that white moved this knight back is to push the pawn to f4. Otherwise, white could move the other knight, right? So knight d2, the idea is white wants to push the pawn to f4. So black played bishop e7, f4, castle, bishop f3, bishop b7. Black needs to be careful because white has some ideas to attack the knight and the rook at the same time. This covered attack. And here, black played bishop e7, knight c3, d5, attacking in the center. And here, Nepomniachtchi played g4, which is typical in such positions. The idea is to play g5 and attack this knight. And notice that the black knight is on d7. If this knight wasn't on d7, the other knight could retreat to d7. But now, this knight on f6 has some difficulty, right? So that's why black moved the knight back to b8, g5, and he played knight e8. I think knight d7 was not playable because the pawn on d5 was hanging. Because now we are blocking our queen, so white can take the pawn on d5, and white can win a pawn. So that's why knight d7 was not possible. And if, for example, the pawn d5 was protected, knight d7 was definitely better than knight e8. But here black had to play knight d7. Knight e8. Okay, so knight e8, e takes d5, e takes d5, bishop g2, knight c7, and white played knight c4, taking advantage of this pin. In this position, white is attacking the pawn on b6, and it's not that easy to protect the pawn on b6 because let's say if you push the pawn, white can play knight a5, and suddenly the bishop on b7 is weak, and the pawn on d5 can be vulnerable if the bishop retreats to c8. So this is a difficult position for black to play. So Magnus figured it out, and he said, okay, I'm gonna sacrifice the pawn, but I'm gonna activate my pieces. So he moved his knight out, knight c6, knight takes b6, and here he played rook b8. So he sacrificed the second pawn, or it's better to say he lost the second pawn, because here the rook was also hanging. So he protected the rook, he moved the rook to a safe square, and then knight takes d5. Knight takes d5, knight takes d5. And in this position, white is up 2 pawns. Now let's see if white can win this game. Okay, I need to mention this, that it's not 2 healthy pawns, because black has something in return, and that is the white's king. If these pawns on f5, on f4 and g5 were on g3 and f2, then white was totally winning. Black didn't have any chances. But since white king is exposed and the pawns are on f4 and g5, the pawns are vulnerable and the king is also exposed. So that's why black has some chances in this position. So black played knight d4, knight into the central square, and also the bishop is open now. So white played c4 to protect the knight. Otherwise, let's say if the knight moves to c3, black can take the bishops, and then black can play f6, and suddenly the white king can, you know, find himself in a difficult situation. So that's why white played c4 here to protect the knight, because white doesn't want to exchange the bishops. The bishop on g2 is protecting the king, so white doesn't want to exchange, and white wants to keep his defensive piece. So here black played bishop d6, and then white played bishop e3, and now black played knight f5 to attack the bishop. White doesn't want to exchange that bishop, so white played bishop d2, and then here black took the knight on d5, bishop takes d5, and Magnus took the pawn b2. So basically black got his pawn back, but he is still down a pawn. Here white played bishop c3, which was a blunder. Guys, I need to add something here, because bishop c3 is not a move that you want to play, and Jan totally missed this move, that black can checkmate the white king in just 5 moves. And this is not a difficult checkmate, especially for the world champion, or it's better to say former world champion. But okay, anyway, rank number 1 in rating list, right? We can call Magnus rank number 1. But anyway, so I want you guys to pause this video and find the checkmate for black. So black to play, and you can checkmate the king in just 5 moves, but all the moves are forced, so it's not a difficult checkmate, guys. I want you to visualize the position and find a checkmate. Okay, you are right. The checkmate starts with a queen sacrifice. How beautiful is that? To sacrifice your queen and checkmate the king. So you play queen g5. And okay, if the queen gets captured, we can checkmate in 3 moves. So 2 more moves. We take the pawn on h2, king h1, and then knight g3. Beautiful checkmate. But white can delay this checkmate a little bit. So for example here, white can move the queen to g4, you take. Then white can play king h1, you play knight g3 check, and if he takes, you're gonna check here and then checkmate here. Or if white moves the king to h1, we can use the same checkmate. You play knight g3, take, you play queen h6, and let's say if the king goes to g1, you can checkmate on h2. If the queen blocks, you can simply take it, and this is absolutely winning. And if after knight g3, the king moves to g1, now you can play knight e4 check to block the bishop. And if the king goes here, you have a beautiful checkmate on g2. So queen g5 was a brilliant move, which was missed by Magnus Carlsen. It was so shocking for everyone. I was watching this game online and all the commentators were just shocked. First, by Jan's move, where he played bishop c3, allowing this checkmate, and second, Magnus Carlsen couldn't find it. So he played knight e3, and he didn't play knight e3 very fast. As you can see, he thought for more than 1 minute in this position. So yeah, and it was funny because like in this 1.5 minutes that Magnus was thinking, you know, that you can see, you know, their like reactions and their facial expressions. So Nepo suddenly found this checkmate while Magnus was thinking, and he tried to be poker face, so he didn't want to show anything. And then he realized that, oh my god, I just lost this game because it's just a checkmate. And when Magnus played knight e3, he was just relieved. You know, he was just relaxed. He could breathe, you know. And Magnus didn't realize it immediately, but after like few seconds or like 1 minute, he just saw the checkmate. He realized the checkmate, and then he was just shocked. And you should have, you know, seen their reactions, because it was just priceless. But anyway, so this was really interesting. Okay, so after moving the knight to e3, Magnus is forking the queen and the rook, but it's better to checkmate your opponent, not right? Anyway, even the world champion or the best player can, you know, miss a checkmate. So here, white played queen e1, and then black took the bishop on d5, which was the right decision. Because if black wants to take the rook, now bishop can take, and now the knight on f1 gets trapped. The knight can't move to a safe square. That's why black took the bishop on d5. So black wanted to get white's bishop pair, and then white took the rook, knight takes f4, queen h4, and the knight on f4 is under attack. So black took the pawn on d3. The bishop is under attack, bishop c3, and here black played bishop e5, bishop takes e5, knight takes e5. Okay, this position, white is better, but since the king is exposed, there are some practical chances for black. So white played rook a e1, knight g6, attacking the queen, queen g4, rook e8, and here white played h4. The best move in this position is to play queen f5, and the idea is to attack the pawn on f7, because if black takes the rook, white can start with queen takes f7, king h8, rook takes e1, and now the idea is back rank mate, and white is totally winning. So let's go back. But here Jan decided to play h4 with the idea h5, but this gives black some time to basically defend the position. Black took the rook on e1, rook takes e1, and then knight f8. So there is no back rank mate at this point. So white moved the rook back to f1, g6, queen f3, attacking the pawn. But at this point, white kind of lost his advantage. A better move in this position is to play a5, which is a difficult move. But the idea is, if the queen takes on a5, now we can play queen f4 and attacking this pawn. And notice that the queen, the black queen, cannot retreat to c7 to protect the pawn because white's queen is covering that square. So after pushing the pawn to a5, it's impossible to take the pawn, and black needs to, play something else. Let's say the queen goes to e8, but this pawn on a5 is on the right square, and then later on we can attack these pawns on a6 and c5. But instead, white played queen f3, black checked on d4. Now black queen is very active. King g2, black took the pawn, and at the same time he is protecting his pawn on f7. So here white pushed the pawn to a5, black moved the queen back to e6, rook f2, c4, rook e2 attacking the queen, queen d7, queen e4, queen c7, queen e5. And as you know, we do not want to exchange the queens. Why? Because if we exchange the queens, white is the one who's gonna win the game, or at least white has advantage. Since white's king is exposed, we want to keep the queens on the board because we can get some sort of perpetual check, or our queen can create some threats against the white king. White king is vulnerable. So here black played queen d7, white played queen e4, and the game ended in a draw with repetition. 3 times repetition, either one can claim a draw. And at this point, the players had 3 minutes and 2 minutes. I think draw was a logical result for both players because, the position that black could checkmate the king and both players missed it, it's kind of, can affect you in a game. So they just wanted to draw and, move on to the next round or next game. But this game was very interesting, especially in the middle game, the ideas and also the tactical moves, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.